Hey guys, you're watching Black Desk Media, and on today's episode, we're talking about Power Rangers. Power Rangers, released March 2017, directed by Dean Israelite, starring Bryan Cranston and Elizabeth Banks. Based on the hit American/Japanese television series, tells the story of five youths who stumble upon ancient power coins, giving them superpowers to protect the world from evil. Okay, where to begin? I've seen a lot of movies over the years. I've seen some good ones, and I've seen some bad ones. I mean, some real pieces of garbage. Oddly enough, this wasn't one of them. I had zero expectations going into this movie. I mean, absolute zero. Not only is there not enough consistency in this movie genre, but everything leading up to this movie looked horrible. I know it has nothing to do with the movie, but the marketing campaign and the poster designs were some of the worst I've ever seen. They don't make any sense. The design is so poor, it looks like a 12-year-old made it on their home computer. And obviously I grew up watching the show, so I know what it is, but still, it just looked so bad. Probably the best and most admirable thing I could say about this movie was its commitment to being what it was, and its unapologetic nature of going about it. When it was good, it was actually pretty good and somewhat enjoyable for the most part. It's been going around a lot lately, but definitely the best part about this movie were the five main characters and their relationship to each other, which makes up for most of the movie. It sort of had this new age Breakfast Club kind of vibe to it. And that really helped set the movie tonally and helped ground the movie in a reality that we as an audience could gravitate towards and relate to. While setting a somewhat realistic tone, it was also over-the-top wacky and fun. And never once did it have to wink to the audience to get them to buy into the weird stuff that was going on. It was like, we're going on this journey, are you coming or not? Speaking of characters, not a huge fan of Elizabeth Banks. And although her Rita was extremely different from not only the show, from the rest of the movie as well, I kind of liked what they did. In some ways, it was completely out of left field. I mean, most of what she was doing was like almost straight out of a horror movie, but it was kind of cool, and it was really kind of bold for them to try and do that. And something different, and something I haven't really seen anybody do ever. We're so used to seeing villains that act like they're bad, but they never really do anything all that bad. Whereas this movie, she's like murdering people and, taking teeth out of their head. Super weird, but kind of cool. I appreciate it for them at least trying something different. Overall, it also gave a really cool new take on the Power Rangers. And it sort of gave them a type of history and universe for them to have existed in. It had a really cool opening scene where it kind of shows what the Power Rangers were like millions of years before humans showed up. And I'm not sure if that's in the original show or in the original Japanese show. As a fresh new take, I thought that was cool. Despite having some really fun sequences, some likable characters, and a kind of a different take on the Power Rangers, sadly this movie was pretty bad. I would say most of its flaws come from everything being so rushed and so condensed. Character arcs, relationships, and motives happen virtually within seconds. Five teenagers go from not knowing each other at all to best friend status while also being thrust into this world where they're all of a sudden supposed to protect the world from evil in a matter of days. There are so many moments where a character will do or say something and you're just like, what? Why would they do that? For example, like to get in their Power Ranger base spaceship, they have to dive off a cliff and swim underneath an underwater cave to get inside. And they do it like 5 different times. And you're just thinking, sir, are you going to jump down in that water every single time you go into your base? It seems a little counterproductive and wet. But these things happen so fast and so frequently, you don't really have time to notice them or to really realize what just happened. There's a scene where Jason and Kimberly practically meet for the first time after she's done some sort of back dive off a 30-foot cliff into a creek in the middle of the woods at night. And then they're talking and they're kind of having a moment and he says, let's run away together. And she says, okay, that seems like a pretty big decision for someone you practically just met. Then there's a scene where I'm sure you've seen in the trailers where they're all jumping across a rock canyon, testing their new powers, and they're all, landing differently. And Jason lands, and as soon as he lands pretty hard, he coughs up blood, and then he goes, I'm okay. No, you're not, dude. You just coughed up blood. You need to go to the hospital. In fact, although they're all likable characters, there wasn't really a reason for them to become friends anyways. At the beginning of the movie where they find their powers at this like kind of rock quarry place. I'm not really sure why they were all there. They just kind of all happened to be there, and then they just all happened to become friends, kind of because they have to, just because they happen to find these coins and they happen to be the Power Rangers. The last battle sequence is just so over the top ridiculous. I know that in the show they knock down buildings and there's all these explosions and it gets kind of goofy, but in this movie, they're driving their gigantic robotic Zords through their small town, crashing and stepping on everything. Knocking down a skyscraper in a dense city is one thing, but when you're knocking down your town square, that kind of goes your whole town. And not to mention, they're doing it without a clue as to what they're doing. And they had just spent an entire movie trying to figure out how to fight and to morph over the course of 11 days, and then within a course of an hour, not even, automatically they know how to drive gigantic, larger-than-life alien technology. And I know that there's like a little cord that kind of sticks to their back. Maybe that's them being plugged into the Zord or becoming one with the Zord, but still, that's just a little too much. I'm not the biggest advocate for things having to be exactly like the source material. It of course helps, but it's not a necessity to an extent. For example, Wizard of Oz is absolutely nothing like its source material in almost practically every way. I'd say about 20% of the movie is from the book, and that's one of the greatest films of all time. But there should be some basic concepts that carry over. Here's what I'm talking about. The design of their suits, their compound, the Zords, and Goldar are awful. They're just garbage. There's just something about the variety and the uniqueness of the show that's not in the movie. In the show, you also have a pretty good variety of the characters between the main Rangers. Although they're all relatively sort of the same, they each stand out, and that gives the audience someone to gravitate towards naturally. In this movie, they're all practically the same. They are all the misunderstood teenager misfit who doesn't belong, and they all wear like the same gray scheme of clothing. I mean, at least in the show, they all wore every episode the color of the Ranger that they were. I mean, in this movie, there's hints of it, but most of the time they're all wearing like dark gray clothes, and they all kind of act the same. And the same goes for when they are in their suits. If you look at the 90s show, I know it's kind of corny now and a lot of it hasn't carried over as well and not aged as well, but each of those helmets were so iconic and so cool. They were different and each of them had its own personality. In this movie, the suits are just so over-designed. I didn't hate them as much as I thought I was going to, but they're so complicated and so gaudy that it's not something you really want to have. It's not something you want to obtain. Just look at the toys, for example. Like, one of these just has a better feel to it. A nicer, attainable, relatable feel, whereas one just feels so over-processed. In Goldar, what? He wasn't anything. I mean, not that I have a special attachment to Goldar or anything, but he's clearly one of the more consistent Power Ranger villains. I mean, he's in pretty much most of the first 3 or 4 seasons, and he's in the original Power Rangers movie. And in this one, he's just gold liquid. And I saw the toy the other day. It's even worse. It's just a gold piece of plastic. And the Megazord isn't much better either. I mean, you've seen it in the previews. It doesn't even really make any sense as to what you're looking at. It was so cool in the show because you got to watch this awesome montage of how all the Zords came together. And then when it finally created the Megazord, you could see where each Zord had its place. It's very hard in this movie to see where each Zord has its place in the construction of this larger Zord. It just doesn't have that look to it that it could have. It's also a world devoid of color. Everything in this movie is just gray. Their clothes are gray. The Megazord is mostly gray. Most of their Zords are gray. Their spaceship base is gray. It's just so bleh. The show and the toys, the original series, and even in the series now, had so much life and color to them that it was a place you wanted to go, somebody you wanted to be. And it just, everything about it, from the logo to, the show and just even the theme song, it had so much life to it and had so much energy. And I think that's one of the things that made that show so great, was how good it made you feel. Overall, I'd say that the sad part about this movie is that it could have been this decade's Transformers. Whether you like that movie or not, at that time, we had never seen a movie like that before in our lives. The standard of special effects that movie set has been something that we have seen echo since then. Not only did it spawn 4 more sequels since 2007, it ushered in a decade of films that use the same style and special effects in their movies. Overall, the structure was there. The shell was there. But in reality, it's just not a quality film by any means at all. It's all over the place with tone. The action scenes could have been better. Character motives could have been more developed. And overall, it just could have been something that could have felt a little more compelling, other than just over-the-top silliness and fun. 10 minutes into the movie, I leaned over to my friend and I said, I have no idea what's going on, but this is a ton of fun. In a way, this is everything I expected the movie to be at its best, but it could have been so much better. I give Power Rangers a 5 out of 10. Alright, that's it guys. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, if you liked what you saw, click down below to subscribe. Thanks.